From a highly secure network of top secret locations across South and Central Texas, this is the Spurs Insider Philly Billy edition. I am MIke Finger. San Antonio Express News Spurs beat writer Jeff McDonald is here, and we're wearing our tuxedos. We've got our bow ties. It's a classed up joint this week. We have the distinguished Texas Radio Hall of Famer, the voice of the San Antonio Spurs for 24 years and 2,200 plus consecutive games, the great author, the great musician, the great Bill Schoening is here. Take two. Bill, how are you this morning?
Well, other than you using the word great a little bit too much, I'm fine. I'm fine. Absolutely great. And I'm great. How about that? So we're all
full disclosure to the listeners. I don't know if we should disclose this, but I want to start with my heartfelt apologies to Bill Schoening because we are doing this for the second time this morning. We've done hundreds of Spurs Insiders, Jeff McDonald and I believe hundreds, a lot, dozens. And the first time we've ever had to do a second version is the morning we're in our tuxedos with Bill Schoening, technical difficulties. But we know we're doing. We know what we're doing now.
Full disclosure is because of all the curse words I kept using.
That's what it
Less
is.
cursing this time, gentlemen.
I'll try.
Bill, want to congratulate you,
Thank you.
on 24 great years. You announced your retirement at the end of last season. You have been the radio voice for so long, the soundtrack to so many great moments in Spurs history, some low moments as well. Just wondering how you are adjusting to life in retirement. You've been globetrotting. You've been driving across the country. How is the semi-retired life treating you so far?
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Mike. Yeah, it's been fun. Our last game was in mid-April, and that was the win over the Toronto Raptors. And since then, I've been traveling a lot. My wife and I have gone across the country. I think we put, 5,000, 6,000 miles on the car or something like that. We've done, I think, 5 national parks now this summer alone. We're up to 36 altogether. And then we traveled overseas as well. So many players now have come from Eastern Europe and Central Europe that I wanted to go see Croatia and Slovenia. We've had several players from there, and they're all bragging on how beautiful it was. Rasha Nesterovic in 2004 told me that I would love his hometown of Ljubljana, Slovenia. So 21 years later, I took him up on the offer and I went to see it, and it's gorgeous. So anyway, just seeing different parts of the world. I'll have an opportunity to do some of that kind of stuff now in semi-retirement. I say semi-retirement, guys, because I'm not going to hang up the headphones completely. I still want to do an occasional, maybe a high school football game here and there. I'm scheduled to do a few this fall, do some college basketball, college baseball in the spring. But just, a few games here and there, more like a pinch hitter instead of being in the starting lineup.
The 24 years of covering the NBA, what sticks out? What are you going to miss? We're leaning into training camp here. Preseason will be soon. There's going to be that opening night that you're not a part of. You haven't watched a Spurs game on TV since 2001 or 2002, Bill. You're not going to be in the arena calling that game with your dulcet tones. What are you going to miss most about life as the voice of the Spurs?
Yeah, that will probably hit me hard that opening night when I'm not calling the game, even during the preseason, because we always broadcast the preseason games on the radio. So I'm definitely going to go through a little bit of withdrawal at that point in time. So, but I'm looking forward to seeing the team this year. I think that they're going to be really good. But I'm going to try to stay busy in some other areas and not just, miss the NBA. Of course, I'll miss the NBA, but like I said, I'll try to do some other things in the meantime. But I'm looking forward to seeing these guys and this new collection of players.
I've mentioned this. I feel like everything I'm going to mention, I've mentioned earlier this morning
on an earlier podcast,
in an earlier podcast exclusive to the three of us. You did so much of the solo, Bill. And by so much of it, I mean all but a few playoff series where you had a partner. And when Jeff and I were in college at UT, you were the voice of the Longhorns, and you worked with the great Craig Way on football games, basketball games. You had a partner. When you came to the NBA, you're asked to do this high-paced, up-tempo sport, 2.5 hours a night by yourself. What was that like, and what were the challenges, the rewards of being able to be the guy who was the listener's eyes and ears and basically everything for so many games throughout the years?
Well, I was really looking forward to the opportunity to just do play-by-play. The first 10 years of my career, I did news and sports in small markets. So the opportunity didn't come to me until 1989, 10 years into my career at KLBJ in Austin, where I could do full-time sports. But even then, I had talk shows. I had a lot of reporting duties. It wasn't exclusive play-by-play. So when the Spurs offered me this job in '01, it was just play-by-play, no talk show. So I could really just kind of concentrate on my craft of play-by-play. So those 2.5 hours went very quickly, Mike, to answer your question. Because of the 24-second shot clock, I had a lot of drop-ins to get in. So my goal was not to have any dead air, just keep it going and do the best I can. And I've often said this, that when you get into the NBA play-by-play chair, you strap in and you go. And during the course of the season, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, twists and turns, kind of like a roller coaster ride. But the main thing is to stay with it and to see it to the end. So I did that 24 times.
Yeah.
What are some of your best memories? I guess maybe championships aside, because those go without saying, but just your memories traveling on the beat, some of the places you've been and we've been together. What are your
memories? We've done so much traveling. You'd say not to mention the playoff games, but they had so many deep playoff runs during my first 18 years with the team. That's hard not to pick those out, especially the 14 championship run that had so many great runs during the playoffs, including Game 5 in the finals, which was my favorite game ever, when they clinched the series and won their fifth championship. But you go through the years, I was just thinking about the random thoughts of like random games. And remember, I don't know, Jeff, if you were there, Mike, you might have been there when Pop won his 1,000th game. It was at Indianapolis against the Pacers. And Marco Bellinelli hit a baseline jumper for the win. And, when Marco hit a three-pointer, I always said, Bellissimo Bellinelli, which is beautiful in Italian. But that time it was a two-pointer. It's the only time I ever used Bellissimo on a two-pointer because Marco hit the game winner. Of course, the next night or that night, they had a legendary dinner. I was not invited at the St. Elmo Steakhouse in Indianapolis. And I was told later by a waiter at that establishment, that's the only night they ever had a Dom Perignon.
Oh. Yeah. Bill, I don't know if you're aware of this, but to honor you, I just saw this the other day. Marco Bellinelli has announced his retirement from the NBA, his official retirement. He reportedly said, "Any NBA without Philly Billy is not an NBA I want to be a part of." And so,
yep.
And it's guys like that, I assume. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just saying, we had so many international guys who were a lot of fun throughout the years to cover, and that gave it a little flavor, I think.
That's exactly what I was about to say. We're on that same wavelength, which I think might be disturbing to me if I'm on the Bill Schoening wavelength. But I assume that's a big part of the memories that you generated over the years, is guys like Marco Bellinelli, not necessarily Tim Duncan and David Robinson and Kawhi Leonard, but you run across so many Marco Bellinellis and Beno Udrih, who famously called you Billy Philly as opposed to Philly Billy.
Yeah, Billy Philly. Beno also dropped an F-bomb on the air one time, guys. I don't know if I already told you that story. We're in Atlanta.
The only one?
The only one? Yep. So he came for post-game, and I guess he was a rookie from Slovenia and didn't know the difference between a curse word and a slang word. Well, he thought the F word was a slang word, which, it's not. So
the SEC come down hard on WOAI after that.
I think they missed it. I do believe they missed it. Although my son was listening in Seattle. He was a student at the University of Washington at the time. And he texted me and said, "Dad, did Beno say what I think he just said? Did he drop the F-bomb?" I said, "Yes, he did. Yes, he did." So after the game, remember Beno had a nice little pull-up 15-foot jumper from the free throw line, little lefty. And one time he was coming down on a fast break, and he passed the ball to Devin Brown on a 2-on-1, and he turned the ball over. He really should have just taken the pull-up jumper. But anyway, I said, "Hey, I really like your pull-up jumper, Beno. Maybe you should use it a little bit more often." He goes, "Oh, like on fast break I have with Devin. We have a 2-on-1. I pass ball to Devin instead of taking shot. I F up." And I said, okay. Let's talk about your defense. So let's change the subject. So the funny story about that is on the plane afterwards, I was telling Will Sevening, a longtime athletic trainer for the Spurs, that story. And he says, well, let's fine him. I said, what do you mean? He says, I've got the NBA fine slips right here. So it was Will's job, I guess, to put the fine slip on a player's locker whenever they got fined for whatever. And he said, what should we fine Bano? I said, I don't know, $1,000. Let's fine Bano $1,000 from the NBA for cursing on the radio. So he put it in Bano's locker. And apparently the next game, Bano's going, oh no, NBA has fined me $1,000 for cursing to Billy Philly on radio.
You probably could have collected that 1,000, maybe. Told him,
Probably should.
yeah, you're supposed to pay it to the radio guy. That's the way it works in the NBA.
Exactly the way it works, yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess most of our listeners probably know that in your spare time, or maybe it's vice versa, you are a prolific songwriter. You're basically the Towns Van Zandt of the NBA play-by-play circuit. I'm wondering, like any good Towns Van Zandt, have you did you use the road for inspiration? And I know the answer to this question because you did. We have your song inspired by the preseason trip to Istanbul. We have several rodeo road trip songs. So tell me about the Istanbul song.
Well, Istanbul in 2014, after the Spurs won that championship, the NBA sent us overseas to play in Berlin and in Istanbul. In Berlin, we played a team called Alba Berlin. In Istanbul, we played a team called Fenerbahce Ulker. And the roster for Fenerbahce Ulker was full of Serbians, Croatians, Turks. There was not a Smith or a Jones on that roster, I promise. So I said, well, how am I going to learn these names? Bielitsa, Mamatolu, all these names. So I just wrote a little reggae beat to it, got my acoustic guitar out. I called my producer, who's better at guitar than I am, and my guitar player, Mike Vasquez, and we worked on the song and did it. But to my knowledge, it is the only reggae song ever written about a Turkish basketball team.
That's the accomplishment, Bill. Forget the 4-time AP play-by-play man of the year. Forget the Texas Radio Hall of Fame. You're the only guy who ever wrote a reggae song.
Reggae
about an Istanbul basketball.
But we could maybe speed it up, Mike, and make
it up and make it ska. Yeah,
ska. Yeah, ska and reggae come from the same musical roots.
Yeah, that epitaph will probably be on my tombstone, just in case you're wondering.
That's you're not supposed to be thinking about. You just retired, but you're gonna have a long, fruitful semi-retirement.
I hope so. I hope so.
The art of describing an NBA play. Did you get better at that over the years? Is that something that you worked on? Just yes. You mentioned the 24-second shot clock. All of this has a rhythm to it. All of it has timing to it. And you're, like I mentioned before, it's not just you're speaking over the video on TV. You are the eyes and ears and all the senses for the listeners at home. Is that something that you honed and got better at, you think?
I certainly hope so. I try to get better, and I also try to keep learning. I think that, even when I got into my 60s and I've been doing this for 40 years or whatever, I still found myself listening to other guys just to see how they would word a certain play or how they would describe a certain play. And I think guys can pick up certain things, not stealing, but like borrowing, right? Mm-hmm. But just different ways to describe plays. And so I try to evolve that way. So I wasn't doing the same broadcast a night in and night out, trying to change it up a little bit. And that's why I like to listen to other guys, because I felt like I could improve. And that's what I tell young people all the time. You guys, I try to mentor young broadcasters. I've got one myself. My son, Carl, has been doing a lot of UTSA stuff lately and is going to be doing some Spurs coverage this year as well. But I listen to him as well and offer critique. And I think that we can all get better no matter how long we've done whatever job we have.
A lot of the places that we saw you on the road in arenas, whether it was at shoot-arounds in the morning, waiting for guys with Jeff and I and Tom Worsborn and the crew, whether it was we'd see you in the tunnel at the AT&T, the
Frost Bank.
What was it? Way back, the SBC Center, the AT&T Center, the Frost Bank Center. Over the years, you'd see Bill with his little recorder in the tunnel waiting for a player. You did the interviews every day. And I know You interviewed a lot of players over the years. You had to have one for every broadcast, a couple minutes a night. What was that like? Who were your favorite guys to interview? What was your strategy for picking guys to interview? Could take us through that part of the job.
Yeah, whoever would say yes and give me 2 minutes. That's basically what my strategy was. No, honestly, there's guys that were go-to guys through the years, that, we're talking earlier about, it's not always getting Tim Duncan or David Robinson, but, sometimes the nuts and the bolts of the team are the guys like Matt Bonner and Fabrizio Alberto and Patty Mills. So I just love going to guys like that because you could really kind of find out what's going on with the team. Even though there might have been role players, there were very, very important role players and guys had good personalities, and in radio and in TV, we kind of like personalities. We like people that can tell stories a little bit and have some fun. And of course, Matt was so great because he was so self-deprecating. I remember when we acquired him from Toronto for Rasho Nesterovic in 2006, Chuck Swirsky, who's now the radio guy for the Bulls, but was the TV guy for the Raptors at the time, he called me and said, Bill, you are going to love Matt Bonner. I said, why is that? He says, well, first of all, he's a big music fan. He likes independent music. He likes different kinds of music. And, obviously Chuck knew that I wrote. And he said he's got a great sense of humor and very self-deprecating. So I said, great. Well, sure enough, for the next 10 years, Matt Bonner was a go-to guy, and of course, he turned me on to a bunch of different music, and I turned him on to some. So Matt Bonner was a guy that I really enjoyed covering for a decade.
And not to keep going back to our earlier conversation, but guys who
it really was a great conversation.
It really was. It's like just way too much cursing though, so we're trying to clean it up. You
shouldn't have invited Dano.
Interview stalwarts that Jeff and I and Tom all appreciate as well. Manu Ginobili, Brent Barry, and your last pregame interview, I believe, Bill, was Harrison Barnes, who was only around a year, but became a pretty good guy for you.
Yeah, I used to try to interview opposing players from time to time, not every night, but through the years, I would pick certain guys that might be really good interviews. Brent Barry was one with the Seattle Supersonics, by the way.
Yeah.
Before he came to the Spurs. And Harrison Barnes was my last interview, and I got the chance to tell him that, when you were playing for these other teams, Dallas and Sacramento and Golden State, I really thought you were my favorite player on the other team. And now you get to the Spurs. He appreciated that. And I really like his work ethic, 82 games in a row this year, 3 straight years now, I think he's gone 82 games in a row, the previous 2 with Sacramento. So all those guys I really enjoyed. You mentioned Brent Barry, real quick Brent Barry interview story. He was with Houston toward the end of his career, and he had seen Pop for the first time with his beard. Remember Pop started growing that beard, 08, 09, whenever that was. And I said, what do you think of Pop's beard, Brent? And he said, I'm still trying to figure out which Beatle he looks like. It's either John or Paul or Ringo.
Apostle, right?
Huh?
Apostle, right?
Apostle, not Beatle. I said Apostle. Yeah, Apostle.
You ruined the joke, Bill.
I ruined the joke. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, give us Brent Barry's review of your debut album.
Yeah, my debut album was called Life in the Minors. And I gave him a copy when I first met him, when he joined the Spurs, actually. And I said, hey, tell me, I know you strum the guitar and like to pick and sing a little bit. Tell me how you like this CD. So I saw him a couple days later. I said, hey, did you get a chance to listen to the CD? He goes, no, it's on the corner of 281 and Jones Maltzberger right now. I said, well, why is that? He said, I threw it out the window like a Frisbee. It flies. And he says, I think all the songs on that record are million sellers. You're going to have 1 million in your cellar. So he used that line a lot through the years, but Brent Barry's a great guy. And, he was with Phoenix last year, and our last road game was at Phoenix. So I got a chance to interview him and hang out with him a little bit before the game. And it was good to see him.
I can't remember who told me this story. It might not have been you, but it's a Brent Barry story too. No, it wasn't Brent Barry. It was Steve Kerr and Danny Ferry. How they found out early when they joined the Spurs that if you run into Pop at dinner, Pop will pick up your tab. So they started following
as Pop.
Yeah, if you're in the same restaurant as Pop, he'll pick up your tab. So they ended up just stalking Pop in every NBA city, finding out, following him to dinner, finding out where he's going, and showing up at every restaurant he was at to get their tab picked up.
Yeah, and they still had their per diem of over $100 a day.
Yeah. I think they were just doing it to be funny, I think. Which I really appreciate.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's similar to what Jeff McDonald and I would do with Sean Elliott. We find out where Sean Elliott's going to be and hope that he will pick up the tab. And Bill, Sean Elliott, I heard a rumor that Sean might have picked up part of the tab at your big going away soiree
Yeah.
at one of your favorite places in the country, in
Yep.
the NBA, at Shay J in Santa Monica on the Spurs' last Los Angeles trip this year.
Yep, that's my favorite place on the road, Shay J. It's a dive bar on Ocean Avenue across from our hotel there in Santa Monica. And the entire broadcast crew took me out, which was great. And we ended up, I don't know if we closed the place. We were there for quite a while. And at the end of the night, Mr. 32, Sean Elliott, picked up the tab. So I always appreciate Sean doing that. Of course, Sean made a little bit more money throughout his career than I did, so I don't fight him for the check.
Yeah, Jeff, you were able to. Jeff, you were able to bid
wines.
farewell to Bill that night too, weren't you?
Yeah, I was there. That's an old LA haunt too. It's like an old Sinatra place
Oh yeah,
to hang out.
back.
It's really
It's-
great.
It's a classic place, guys, and that I say it's a dive bar, but the food's actually very good in there. And they got one room in the back that is still reserved for the Rat Pack, for Joey Bishop and Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra and all those, Dean Martin, because they would hang out on occasion. That was their spot. So even though it's occupied by somebody else now, they keep that open just in case those guys ever show up. I don't think it's going to happen now.
If anybody's seen that Billy Bob Thornton series on Amazon Prime, Goliath, a lot of it, the first season is filmed in there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a little hotel right next to it. And they shot, I think that was one of the scenes. That's where his office was. I think.
Yeah.
Hotel right next door. So, yeah, you're talking about Steve Kerr and Danny Ferry. I got a good story about those guys. My first year, might have been my second year with the Spurs. No, it was first year. It was the 02. It was my second year with the Spurs, Manu Ginobili's rookie year. We're in Phoenix, and I got invited to go to a suite and watch the Diamondbacks play. And in that suite, all of us traveled together. It was David Robinson, Steve Kerr, Manu, Danny Ferry, a couple other guys. And Manu did not get very entertained by baseball. That was his first Major League Baseball game. Now I understand that he's a part owner of the San Antonio Mission, so he probably likes baseball more now. But this was, I think, his first Major League Baseball game. And I asked him afterwards what he liked about the game. And he said the only entertaining part was Steve and Danny had a $5 bet on whether or not the ball after the third out would be landing on the mound or off the mound. You know how whoever catches the third out, right, drops the ball on the mound, but it doesn't always stay on the mound. So they had a $5 bet on or off. That was that was their entertainment. So Manu got more of a kick out of that than he did the game itself.
So for like 18 half innings, they had this bet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if we stayed the entire 9 innings, to be honest.
But we were talking earlier about off the air, I guess, about other places that you other haunts you liked across the league. You mentioned one in Chicago that you really liked, and it led to a very good story in a certain voice.
Off day in Chicago, I wanted to go see Harry Carey statue, which is at Harry Carey's restaurant on Dearborn. Great place, good food, always a good time in there. Everybody's in there having a good time. And the waitress had at some point announced that whoever had the best Harry Carey impersonation at the bar was going to get free lunch. Of course, I stepped right up and said, "Hey, how can the guy from Mexico lose the ball in the sun? It's not like the sun shines down there 365 days a year, and we bring this guy up in the Mexican League and he can't catch a pop-up. Holy cow." Well, that was it. I won. So I got a free Pinot Grigio and a chicken sandwich.
That's a heck of a deal. Easiest Pinot Grigio you ever earned, Bill.
Absolutely.
Around the league, were there places? I know, like Ushers in New Orleans, in arenas, people recognized you. In Chicago, you're recognized as the former head coach of the '85 Bears. But where did you have guys in, like at Shay J? I'm sure there's a barmaid. There's somebody there who recognizes you when you walk in. Did you have places where people knew you around the league?
Well, Mary is the bartender. She's from Texas, by the way. She's the bartender there at Shay J, and she calls me her favorite irregular regular.
Uh-huh.
So I was an irregular regular, but yeah, there's places like that. Smokey Joe's is a place in Philly, my hometown, where I would go and listen to my friend Ken Queter, who has a regular gig there. He's played there every Tuesday night there for 30 years now, believe it or not. So I think one night I took Jeff McDonald there, if I'm not mistaken.
I was there at least twice, and I think I remember more of those shows than your buddy Queter does.
That's probably true. That's probably true. But
If I recall, one of them, he was coming in on a train from New York, like that night, like while the show was about to start, he's on a train and seemed to have been imbibing, maybe on the way.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah,
That was a fun. It was a fun show. I don't think it's going to go in like the Rock and Roll Hall. Well, maybe it will go in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for rock and roll reasons, man. But it was fun. It was entertaining. It was great. I always appreciated getting to hang out with you and Kenny.
Well, that was a good thing. Yep.
One thing that we occasionally take for granted about traveling this country covering NBA games, which can be a drag at times. It's not all glitz and glamour, but you do get to know some places. You get to know some people. I think back to early in my career, we used to stay at the Marina Del Rey Marriott back when we could afford it on trips to LA, and I'd always have the rental car. And I was leaving the little rental car stand or the parking garage there at the Marina Del Rey Marriott one afternoon, and there was an attendant there, and if he was a day old, he was 80, and he looked down, and I guess you had to show your license, or it showed up on the screen in his little booth there, and he said, "Oh, you're from San Antonio. Do you know Glenn Rogers?" And Glenn Rogers was a longtime NBA beat writer for the Express News before Mike Monroe. But it's little moments like that why would a parking lot attendant at this hotel in Los Angeles know a sports writer from San Antonio? But I'm sure you had moments like that all around the league, Bill, where just guys you see over and over again.
Well, it's interesting. I was in Memphis one time and got to the game early, like always. Was always on the first bus, so it's 2 hours for the game when you get to the arena. And there were some bands there, and one guy's name was Slovak. The other guy's name was Tinge or something like that. Anyway, they were from Poland, and they listened to the games on the internet. They learned English when they were kids, and I think Jeremy Sohan had been drafted that year, so he was a rookie. So they were very interested in Sohan because he was from Poland, and but they knew who I was. They listened to me. They knew my catchphrases. So you don't realize sometimes the global reach that the internet has and that the NBA interest has when somebody from Poland knows who you are.
That's great. And you were able to announce your retirement, I think, at the Spurs' urging, because they wanted you to get your flowers, as the kids say.
Yeah, the kids say these days.
And I'm glad that you were able to do that, because I'm sure you had some moments those last few home games where people coming up to you, telling you stories. Did you ever hear from anybody who kind of gave you full circle type moments in your career?
Yeah. Well, that last game, it was a home game against Toronto on a Sunday afternoon, and it was just a steady stream of people during the breaks. They come out during the timeouts, and I love that. That was very nice. A lot of selfies, some autographs, and stuff like that. And that was really an awful lot of fun. Now, what was your question, Mike, about running into somebody or?
Oh, well, full circle moment. We have to break the fourth wall here. He's told the story before, but it's a very good story about the Trinity student who interviewed you, Bill.
Yeah, and I remember who it was. You guys know the writer in San Antonio, Ken Rodriguez.
Yes.
Yeah, Ken had a rule.
Worked with him.
Great guy. And at 9:00, his kids had to go to bed. Well, his son had to go to bed, but he had the radio upstairs. So he was able to listen to the playoff games on the radio. Early in my career, I had done an interview with someone, and I mentioned that when I was 10, I was falling asleep one night listening to a guy named Byram Sam do the Phillies games from the West Coast. And I said to myself, that's what I want. I want kids to fall asleep listening to my voice one day. Well, sure enough, Ken Rodriguez's son was the guy that fell asleep listening to me, because he interviewed me for a paper he was writing at Trinity University, and he told me that story. So then it was a full circle moment, because that's what I said. I wanted kids to fall asleep listening to me. I found the kid that fell asleep listening to me.
What's interesting about all that is the listeners of this podcast fall asleep listening to Mike Finger's voice. So,
well, the same is true with my book, guys. I wrote a book about 3 years ago called Stories, Sports, and Songs. And
available on Amazon, I hear.
Available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Act now. Are standing by. So anyway, when you go do things like that, and you get involved in all kinds of different scenarios where you meet people. It's nonstop, really. It just goes on and on.
One of that greeted or that was part of your retirement announcement is you were kind enough, because we're all joking here, but you have a soft spot for Jeff McDonald, I think.
No, nobody has a soft spot for Jeff McDonald.
And Jeff
My
McDonald
parents
had
don't.
Jeff McDonald had the big Bill Schoening interview ahead of everybody else when he announced his retirement at the end of last season. Jeff did a great job. His biggest challenge was editing down the voluminous quotes in the interview into something that could fit in the daily newspaper. But it was a great summary of how far you'd come, and in your early days, you landed in Texas in the late 70s, I believe, like 1979. And there's just the part about you working in Huntsville, Texas. And anyone who grew up in Texas knows what you think of when you think of Huntsville, the major employer there. And Bill, you were a part of that. You covered how many of the big events there?
29 lethal injections is the number recovered. And I was there for 6. I was actually in the chamber for 6 of them. For a long time in my career, first 10 years of my career, I did news as well as sports. My goal was always to be a full-time sports guy. But in small market radio, you got to wear a bunch of different hats. In fact, a couple of times during my tenure in Huntsville, I got offered news jobs in Houston, which would have been a lot more money at bigger market and bigger station and all that. But I didn't want that next move to be in news. I wanted to be in sports. So I kind of held out for that. It's interesting looking back on it, all the different things that happened just right. I caught a lot of breaks along the way. So I'm very, very fortunate about that.
That must have been an interesting job ad to respond to. Must cover Sam Houston, football, basketball, baseball, and also lethal injections.
Yeah, lethal injections. And back then in the 80s, it's terrible to say this, guys, but I made extra money covering the executions and the prison system because Texas had a network called AP. It's a Texas AP network out of Dallas. And they were always wanting stories about the prisons. The overcrowding was going on. There was a lot of prison violence, the executions. There was talk about privatizing prisons at the time. So there was a lot of information coming out of Huntsville, and I was there. So I was able to, it's terrible to say, but it's true. I was able to make extra money because I was covering the executions.
And then you moved to Austin. You get a big break, and you're this kid who grew up in Philadelphia, who I'm assuming back then it was what Big Five is what you thought of college sports was in Philadelphia. You didn't have a full appreciation, I don't think, of Southwest Conference or Big 12 or SEC football, and yet you're in the middle of that, and like pretty quickly you became pretty synonymous with the Burnt Orange, Bill.
Well, it was so much fun. I got a real good taste of what football was in Texas when I went to La Mesa, Texas. My first job in Texas, 1980. I did 3 years of high school football there. And
Golden Tornadoes.
It was Friday Night Lights. But I was cutting my teeth, getting to learn how to do games. And 3 years and the great thing about that station, football, basketball, baseball, like we did all the games, Babe Ruth League. I did little dribblers, little 10-year-old kids. Final score of the game was 10-8. But I didn't care because I was making $10 a game. So I was reeling it out. I was really reeling in the money at that time.
Did you ever have any inclination to just rip those 10-year-olds a new one?
No, because
the kid can't even dribble.
Well, yeah, but that kid's dad was the cotton gin owner, and he was sponsoring the broadcast. So no.
Well, one of them is probably the town sheriff's kid. Like, you don't want to mess with that.
Hey, you know what? My first job. This is funny. And talk about culture shock. I got this news job at KPT in La Mesa. Of course, the reason I took the job was to do the ball games, but I had to do news as well. And I got to meet Sheriff J.D. Bartlett. Now, this guy was right out of Central Casting. He had the big beer belly. He had the big belt buckle. He had the starched shirt. He had the white hat. He even had a spittoon. Okay. So he was chewing and spitting and talking to me. And he said, "Where'd you say you was from, boy?" And I said, "Philadelphia, Pennsylvania." He goes, "Well, that makes you a blue-bellied Yankee." I said, "Yankee?" I said, "Well, I don't like the Yankees. I'm a Phillies fan. I don't like the Yankees." He goes, "I don't mean that, boy. I mean, you're from north of the Mason-Dixon line, boy." And I said, "Are you talking about the Civil War, Sheriff? That ended in 1865. That was 115 years ago."
Well,
and he goes,
Some confusion about that.
That war didn't end for all of us. It didn't end.
Yeah. See what
I guess not. Okay. But I got along with the sheriff because he started listening to ball games. And he told me, Bill, I like your play-by-play, but you go too fast. You talk too fast. I said, well, I can't slow down the game, Sheriff, So but we got along because he liked my play-by-play, and I never brought up Ulysses S. Grant or Robert E. Lee or anything like that.
The going fast ended up suiting you pretty well in your later years, I assume.
Going fast?
24,
yeah.
24-second shot clock.
Yeah, 24-second shot clock. I didn't have a partner when I got to the NBA, so I was used to having an analyst. So, yeah, and that caffeine, I used to drink a lot. I still do. Tea in the morning and tea in the evening when I had to work. But that caffeine got me through a lot of games.
We'd see Bill in the pregame with Pop. I know you didn't get a chance to Pop for some reason. I don't know why. He was so cooperative with everyone else in the media, Bill, but he didn't give you a lot of one-on-ones over the years, but often in the pregame availability, Bill was a regular there with his
the one the NBA makes Pop do.
Yeah. laughing at those of us who were asking questions that went nowhere in pregame availabilities with Pop. But Bill put in the work, man. That's what you got to say about Bill Schoening.
There's got a moniker.
He was always prepared. Did all the reporting. Did all the work. He was ready.
Try to be ready for just about anything. One time in Santa Monica, we were at the high school having a shoot around, and I was doing a pregame interview with Manu. And then this is probably 05, 06. So I hadn't done a pregame interview with Pop in 5 years. And he decided that day, that's the day he wanted to do a pregame interview. So I'm in the middle of interviewing Manu, and he goes over to try to distract Manu, make him laugh or whatever. Manu was a great pro, got through the interview, no problem. I turned around, Pop was gone at the end of the interview. So anyway, I got on the bus. Guess who's on the bus? Pop. Only one person on the bus. It's Pop. And he goes, well, today was your chance. Today was your big opportunity to do a pregame interview with me. But no. You're off doing Manu's interview. You're interviewing Manu.
It was one of my low-key favorite.
I said, Pop, I've got my recorder with me. Let's do it right now. No. It's too late. You blew your chance. That's it. And so that was my only chance to get a pregame interview with Pop.
My favorite, that was one of my things that Pop would do. Would spend a whole road trip just not answering questions. And then by the last game, act surprised that nobody wanted to ask him questions. What are you guys, just eye candy? Like, well, no, we've been asking questions for a week and a half now, getting nowhere.
Me to write the story for you?
Did you ever have a Pop was playing a part in a way, Bill, as we all know.
Yes.
Like he was a sincere person. He was a real person, but he also knew how to play a character, like in a lot of ways. The sideline interviews with Craig Sager and things like that. Like he was playing into it. Did you ever have any moments where that stick out with him, whether it was on air, probably off air, where you kind of saw through the facade and saw the real Pop? Is there any memories like that you have of him?
Yeah, a lot of people think that he's a curmudgeon and he's not very funny. He's got a great sense of humor. And what I would see a lot of times is his acts of charity that he would not want anyone to publicize. You guys know that, right? Yeah. He doesn't want any publicity on that. But one night I was in Denver and I had my Spurs logo shirt on. And the guy says, are you at Spurs? I said, yeah, because your coach is a really good guy. I said, really? He says, yeah, last year I was working at a steakhouse down the street, and the coaches and some players came in, and we had to stay open for about an extra hour or so. And he asked me at the tail end of the at the dinner, how many extra people had to stay because of us. And I said, I don't know, Coach. Maybe there's a couple of dishwashers back there, a couple of bus boys, about 7 of us. So he immediately whipped out 7 $100 bills. So give everybody $100 for staying. So, and these guys are probably making what, $10 an hour, if that. So to stay an extra hour and make $100. So little things like that. I think that those little acts of charity that would go unnoticed, I think are important.
Yep. The you said earlier that you are not you don't consider yourself retired. You should consider yourself semi-retired. What are you looking forward to? I said it's going to be a long, fruitful retirement for you. What lies ahead for Bill Schoening?
I hope so. Well, the number one thing doesn't involve work, it's travel. So I'm going to be traveling quite a bit. We've already traveled a lot. My wife and I have put in a lot of miles this summer already, going overseas and traveling extensively in the States. But as far as on-air stuff's concerned, I'm probably going to do a few high school football games this year. I haven't really gone out and tried to get a lot of extra work, to be honest with you guys. A couple people have called me to do games here and there. So I'll probably end up doing some college basketball this fall, this winter, and some college baseball in the spring for sure, because I've really missed doing baseball. And like I said, some high school football this fall, maybe anything that, falls in my lap. But I really am at the point where I don't have to work, so any little thing that comes up, if I get an extra assignment, I'll take it here and there. But, it's good to be able to say no once in a while too,
Do you think you'll finally have the time to learn that elusive fourth chord on the guitar?
Yeah, 3 chords. The truth is what I believe in, G, C, and D. But I'm learning a little A action, and a little E minor, and a C major 7. So I'm
you're in the minor chords now. Are you getting into the sharp?
Yeah,
You getting
yeah.
sharp
Out.
chords?
Watch out.
There was
You'll be playing at the Saxon Pub next week.
Hey, I did play at the Saxon Pub. You missed the show, Jeff.
I was not invited, I guess.
No, I publicized it. You know what it was right in the beginning of the season in 23. And I'm sure that you had your game face on already, and we're, laboriously studying the next opponent coming up on the roster.
And they've never asked you back since.
No, but it's an open invitation. Joe Abel's a good friend of mine. I'm a regular there. I'm a regular on the other side, of course, not on stage. But we'll probably have another one. I'm working on an R&B song right now, Jeff. So tomorrow I go in the studio and start working on that. It's already written.
You got a title?
I've got about 4 or 5 songs already written. It's just a matter of now finding time to go in the studio and record them.
We got to wind down because we've kept far too long this morning. But the first time,
you're going to pay him $100 though.
This might have been. We didn't need to give $100 for staying late. The first recording that did not take of this, and this might have been why, is there was a really poignant moment from Jeff McDonald speaking to Bill about his impact. I want to give him the chance to do that again, and this might ruin this recording too. But go ahead and Jeff and try to recreate that.
What struck me is it's 2 summers in a row that we've had an off-season podcast guest, and we don't have guests very often. But 2 seasons in a row, we've had a longtime, iconic, retiring Spurs broadcaster named Bill on our airwaves here. Last year, of course, it was Bill Land retiring from Spurs TV, and I said this to Bill then, and so I want to say this to Bill Schoening now. I think for those of us that are in the newspaper business that are at all the games, like Finger and I are, we don't get a chance to watch a lot of the games on TV or listen to them on the radio. So we maybe don't fully understand the impact that those guys had on Spurs fandom. And it's only after they say they're retiring that there's this outpouring on social media and even in person and even emails, to me, talking about how much these guys have meant to their Spurs fandom and how there's all these great memories they have of Spurs games and big Spurs moments, championships and playoff wins and overtime victories, and the soundtrack of those memories to them in their minds are the voices of either Bill Land or Bill Schoening. And I guess I just wanted to pass that along, how much these guys have just meant to Spurs fans, probably more than they even know, and certainly more than I even knew until it was pointed out to me. I mean, there'll be people that will tell me like, yeah, I couldn't be in front of a TV for that, 05 finals game because I was driving my kid back from a Little League game. But what I remember from driving back to that game is Bill Schoening's voice calling that big victory, calling the championship game. And so I guess I just wanted to say that publicly and recognize that publicly, how much you guys have meant to people who care about the Spurs.
Well, I appreciate that, Jeff. When I was growing up, radio was probably a lot more important than it is now. Unfortunately, there's so many different ways to get the game now. And of course, the radio itself, I went to an NBA meeting a few years ago, and they used to have radio and TV kind of separate rooms, but they didn't have radio anymore. They had audio dissemination. So I'm no longer a radio guy. I'm now an audio disseminator.
That sounds a little dicey there. I don't know.
It really does, doesn't it?
I don't like disseminate anything.
But from the time I was a little kid, this is what I wanted to do, is describe games and on the radio. Never wanted to do TV. Look at my face, radio, right? So, but one of the things that I appreciated through the years is that people would come up to me from time to time. And of course, at the very end, as you mentioned, this outpouring of love, I was overwhelmed the last few days after the Spurs announced that I was retiring, the love I got from the Spurs fans. And you'd hear those same stories that you were just talking about, that, I had to drop my kid off in Little League, or I had to pick my kid up in college and I was on the way back, whatever it was. And because not everybody can be plopped in front of the TV, even during the playoffs, for every game. So it's good to know that people have good, fond memories of those games. I tried to keep them entertaining and upbeat, and always tried to relay the excitement of what was going on. But during those years, that was really an easy job, guys, because those teams were so much fun to watch and were so successful, so consistent, that it was a real pleasure. So, as I mentioned earlier, I try not to take any of that for granted, and always appreciate what I had.
Well, you are greatly appreciated. I think, as Jeff so eloquently put it, I don't think you realize even the impact that you had on people. Just giving people something to root for and positive memories. It's a great thing, Bill. You gave a great gift to people. You gave a great gift to us. You gave two great gifts to us, more gifts than we deserved this morning, to be here twice.
I'm getting a Pinot Grigio out of this deal. I'm telling you right now.
More than one. You might have earned 1.5, Bill.
Okay.
Hey,
we will see you down the road. Look forward to seeing you and all your friends down the road, and sincerely enjoy your retirement. You earned it. Thank you so much for being here. And on behalf of the listeners of this show, the ones and twos and dozens of them, thanks for the time you gave us. Until next time, everybody out there, take care of each other and keep it real.